Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today's episode, I'm talking about for my first electric skateboard build, I didn't really know what the best parts were going to be for it, so I did opt for kind of an all-in-one unit with my ESC and the remote. And in retrospect, that was a really bad decision because ultimately what happened was all of the power ended up cutting off to the board as I was in the middle of riding, and it caused me to fall and almost break my shoulder. So for me, the biggest reason I'm doing this upgrade is for the reliability. You can see here, I just turned on the board, and as soon as I give it any power, the light's going to cut off here. So as far as troubleshooting goes, there's really only one of two things that this could have been, either the battery or the ESC. I was relatively sure it wasn't the battery because the LED lights that I have hooked up to it still would function. Even after the power cut off, there would still be just a little bit of electricity that would turn on. So it seemed like once the ESC turned off, there was just some sort of short within the circuit there. And so that was kind of the way I troubleshooted here, was I just plugged the charger in just for a moment just to reset the ESC. And then after I unplugged it, I could use the board to its full function again. Now, as soon as I put weight on it, it would cut off again. So that's what led me to believe that it was a problem with the ESC. As soon as there was any type of load, it powered off. So for the initial build, I was able to find a lot of the parts off of Amazon. And so for this upgrade, that was the first place I went. And I was lucky enough to be able to find the VESC along with the remote to go with it, as well as the Bluetooth receiver so I could pair it and program it once everything was installed. Now I'll make sure that I link all of the parts in the description below, so if you guys were interested in doing this upgrade or needed to get these parts, you have a quick way to do that. There's a couple of differences between the ESC and the VESC, but the biggest one I think is going to be how customizable you can make your board if you're using a VESC. Typically an ESC isn't programmable, and so whatever stock settings come on it are kind of what you're stuck with. There isn't really an option to upgrade the remote easily, and using the VESC, you have a lot more options for the power output. The biggest downfall of a cheap ESC is the amount of amperage that it's able to continuously output, and by using a VESC, you can have full control over that output, as well as have a lot more amperage for that controller itself. Looking at the two side by side, there's a few obvious differences right off the bat. Most noticeably is going to be the cables. The power cables, the motor cables, everything about it is a lot thicker and a little bit more durable. The remotes that I'm using here, you can see they're very similar. The VX1 from FlipSky is the one I'm going to be pairing with this VESC here, and then the one on the right side is the one that came with the cheaper ESC. So there were no connectors soldered onto the VESC when it came, and so I did need to connect the 4mm bullet connectors for the motor wires, and then an XT90 connector for the power. On the battery end, I also connected the matching XT90 connector as well, just to upgrade that, so there's a little bit more anti-spark protection there as well. The next step here was changing out the power button. This VESC came with a slightly larger power connector than the ESC, and so I needed to make the hole here just a little bit bigger so everything would fit through. After everything's connected, just doing a quick check to make sure that it all works before I reconnect everything in its final position. I originally used Velcro to affix everything into the enclosure, and so I'm just cutting a couple of new strips here to reattach everything that I had to remove, and then for the VESC here, just putting a new strip on there so it has something to secure it down with. Now for the remote, the module actually came with the remote here, and there's a spot on the VESC that it plugs right into. So that was pretty much just plug and play. And to pair it, it was actually really simple. You just had to power off the VESC, turn on the remote, press and hold those two buttons there for about 3 seconds until the light flashes consistently, and then power on the VESC, and everything pairs up. The remote itself does have a couple of different modes here. Green, yellow, and red for low, medium, and high speeds. If you press the power button twice, then what it does is show you the battery status of the actual remote itself. And there is a reverse function on this as well, but I don't plan on using that too much. One of the last things I was going to do while I had this thing open was change out the wrapping on the battery. When I initially made this, I didn't have the correct size heat shrink tubing, and so I just used the craft foam to wrap it and secure it, but I wanted to make it look extra clean here, and so I did finally get the correct size heat shrink tubing. So all I'm doing here is just removing that craft foam and then rewrapping it with the heat shrink tubing, and then using a heat gun to shrink everything down. Now the very last piece of this puzzle is the Bluetooth module for programming of the VESC. Normally you have to use USB and connect it directly to a computer in order to do that, but I wanted this to be a wireless option to use the app that VESC has, and so I got this Bluetooth module in order to make that happen. Programming the VESC was actually really easy using the app. I'm glad I went with the Bluetooth option, so that way I don't have to continue opening up the enclosure every time I wanted to make some changes. This time I can basically update the board in real time if I ever wanted to change any of these parameters. I won't get too much into the settings that I use for this. Just know that using a VESC like this, you can make it customizable to what suits you. So that's it, you guys. Everything's been upgraded. The new VESC is working flawlessly. I've taken it out on several rides and I'm not having any issues with any acceleration cutout or sagging or anything like that. I would definitely recommend upgrading if you guys don't have a VESC, or if you're using a cheaper ESC. Upgrading is definitely worth it to make sure that you unlock the full potential of your skateboard. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you guys have any questions or comments, make sure you leave those below. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.